Alright guys, it's Thomas Massa coming at you with our Wannabe Outdoors video. This week's video, we are doing our how to troll for walleyes video. Specifically, this is what we do when we're fishing back on Lake Oahe.
Now it'll work on any lake that you can troll on, but you know, Angostura, one of our hills lakes here, and it does good for everything that we do. So you guys have been watching the snap weight videos, those big fall walleyes we've been catching. We're gonna start there. We'll go over rod length and stuff. Our short rods that we use there are a 7-foot downrigger rod. I use Shimano Triton rods. I've been using those rods for probably 30 some years. Same rods that we use on our boards, only the board rods are a little bit longer. They're an 8-foot rod. So yeah, that's what we use for rods for our short snap weight and our board rod. Our long snap weight rod is actually a dipsy diver rod. It's a 10-6 dipsy diver rod. If you get much longer than that, you start running into issues with how long the handle on your net needs to be. They are pain in the behind when they start getting into that 12-foot, 14-foot. You really got a lot of rod to work with there, and it's just harder to handle.
And then as far as reels, these have got dios on them, but you'll see us run pens as well. Just a decent line counting reel with a good drag on it is really what you're looking for. Not brand specific. We really haven't found one that's way better than the rest of them. There's definitely some that aren't as good, but they're all pretty solid as far as you get good line counting and good drag on it.
Yeah, you want a smaller capacity for your braid. And even then, you probably want to put some backing on it because you don't want to have, 300 yards of braid on your reel to fill up that spool. So we'll put a old mono backing on it and then tie our braid into there, and we'll usually run 300, 400 feet just so we got a good spool capacity, so we've got that retrieve rate where we want it. Match them all the same length. Yeah, you're gonna break some line off here and there, and you can always redo stuff, but the beauty about braid is that you can keep using it. You want to get a good quality braid that doesn't fray. We use Suffix 832, and it works really well. Does not fray. Actually probably use this line for 3 or 4 years at a time, and then a lot of times we'll just flip it around and use the other end of it. That doesn't get exposed much. As far as the snap weight goes, I use an 8-ounce weight. I don't vary that. When I'm fishing snap weights, it's pretty much 25 feet out to 35 and 40. I don't like to fish much deeper than that. I can't release fish if I get deeper than that. Just makes it tougher. The weight we use, as Thomas was showing you, just has a swivel that's hooked it right into the weight. We use a snap to actually hook into that. So that's what our snap will be. That's like a number 6 or number 7. It's 1.5 inches long. I modify the clip just a little bit, but to actually put that weight on that snap, you just unhook it, put the weight on, there's your snap weight. When we put it on the line, we make a loop, and then we actually hook that snap right into that loop. And Thomas will show you that too.
All right, guys, we're gonna go over the knots that Don describes. I've got a, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 foot long piece of 30-pound braid, 30-pound braid here, just so you guys can see it a little better against this background. The very first thing is, so we've got our braid, right, and we've got our lure on this end and our rod tip on this end. So let's tie that knot to get that snap weight hooked into the line. So so we've got our 40 feet or whatever on this end to our lure, and we're just making a loop, right? Don't really need to overlap them. I mean, you can pull it out like this if you would like to, but I'm kind of just laying it flat, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just make an overhand knot. Maybe. There we go. Make an overhand knot in that loop. If you want your loop to be smaller, just let go with this hand if you want your loop to be a little bit bigger. You know, I don't really have that much hanging out here. It would be a little bit tougher to get it in there. So I'm going to hold on this end for a little bit. Now it's about the right size. I'm going to let go. And there is my loop for my snap weight. So you hook your snap weight in there, and you'll have your lure down on this end and your rod tip over on this end. And what will happen, why this knot is so good, is what will happen when you get a big fish on, is he will actually pull this knot out, right? Boom, just like that. A lot of times he'll pull it until it's just a little dot right there and it's still actually there. You'll want to take and pull that out. But that keeps your line from getting really, really beat up. If you were to tie like a permanent knot in your line, it would become a permanent weak point in your line where eventually it's going to wear out and break. But having it slide through like that, you can move it. You know, if you start seeing some discoloration, you can move it 6 inches this way or 6 inches back this way. Just move that knot around just a little bit. 6 inches of line here and there isn't going to matter. Your reels aren't precise enough for 6 inches either way to matter.
We started fishing snap weights when the boys were little. The old lead had a big diameter, Dacron coated. You needed 230 to, you know, almost 300 feet of line to fish out in that 25 to 35 foot depth. They were too small to reel that much line in. Even without a fish on it, sometimes it was too much work for them. They just get tired. So we started fishing the snap weights. We run 40 feet from the lure to the snap, and then you adjust your depth from there. If we're fishing, you know, 30 feet down, we probably have between 35 and 37 feet of line out to that weight. And then speed makes some difference, but not as much as it does with lead. And you can run a number 5 Shad Rap the same depth as you can run an 800 series reef runner with no problem at all. And it makes a big difference when that bait that you're wanting to key on is that certain size. It's like when the gizzard shads start to move out of the bays, they're not very big, so sometimes you got to use a 5 or a 7, especially on a post-cold front or something like that, rather than using like a number 12 Husky Jerk or an 800 series reef runner.
So another thing you'll see us doing out there deep is use a planer board. We also use planer boards up shallow. What planer boards are for is to spread your lines out so you can use more lines, or put a bait somewhere that you can't get it with the boat. A lot of times when we're pulling lead up shallow and we're using planer boards, we'll have a planer board with 4, 5, 6, even 10 feet of line behind it, running up in 1, 2, 3 feet of water with a flicker shad or something like that, trying to get those fish that are right up on the bank. Now we use walleye boards. There's another brand that's just as good, offshore boards. Offshore boards are, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of we just run walleye boards just because that's what we've always run. Nothing against offshore boards. The only problem with walleye boards is the clip that they come with is not the clip that we run. You can see there we run this different aftermarket clip here. Way better clip. The one that they come with, it just doesn't hold your line. It'll fall off. You hit a wave with the board or something, or you don't even need to hit a wave. I mean, a fish hits it, the board's gonna slip back. You're probably gonna lose that fish because of that. So we run these clips, and even with these better clips, we're still wrapping that braid around the main post of the snap there to make sure that that line doesn't slip at all.
We really don't want that board to come off and run down to the fish and end up being an extra hindrance when you're fighting that fish. You can clip the advanced Dyneema lead into the board. If you do the polyester or the Dacron and you snag up or you get a big enough fish on, it's probably going to break at the board. You might want to adjust the tension on your clip a little bit, but yeah, with that advanced Dyneema coated lead. All right, that pretty much covers what we do with snap weights and braid. The braid we use is a 20-pound 832 Any 20 pound, just make sure you use something that's got a really good abrasion resistance to it, because when you're putting it on the boards, you're wrapping it up for the snap weights, you don't want that stuff fraying, because it'll start to fray in the same spot and you'll end up breaking things off. So Power Pro would be another one that's really good about not breaking when you. The lead we use 6.5 foot rods for our straight back short rods. And we use 10.5 foot rods for our out the side, our long rods. You keep the boat in like 5 foot. Sometimes that long rod on the inside, you only got about 8-9 feet of line on it because it's running shallow enough on a break or something. You'll catch fish on that. We literally probably troll with lead about 90% of the time when we're trolling. If those fish are less than 30 feet, up to 2 feet, we're probably pulling lead at some point. And again, you can use big lures in shallow if you want to, because you just crank in a little bit more lead. Speed makes a difference with lead. This time of year, I mean, it's cold, and in the fall it's cold. The fall fish are more aggressive than these spring fish that we're catching, but we're running like 1.2 in the spring, sometimes even 1, like if we're fishing on Lake Sharp, below the dam at Pier. The rest of the time, usually it's 1.5, 1.7. Summertime, shad bite back in the bays, like 2.3, 2.5. You're cranking it along pretty good. So you're gonna have to adjust your line length out to the depth that you want. The old leads were really pretty thick. Diameter was big time. I told you we used to troll like a number 9 shad rap at 28 to 30 feet of water. We'd have 250 to almost 300 feet of line out, depending on how fast we were going. The new lead cores, the diameter is way smaller. You don't need nearly as much line out. We're running with an 800 series reef runner. We're running 130 to 140 feet of line out at 1.7. That's getting us down into that 30 plus range. So that's really changed the game as far as that lead's concerned. Like I say, the Dyneema ones, that coating makes them a lot stronger. I don't know that I notice any difference in how they actually sink. But I use the Suffolk stuff. There's a lot of other, Tough Line makes a great one. There's a lot of leads out there that work, but you want something that's going to have a diameter that's going to be in that 0.25 to 0.23 inch range. And that's just we use 18-pound test, and that's what we put out there. So the long rod, again, you can look at like a Dipsy Diver rod. I think this is actually an Okuma mooching rod. Don't even know if they have them still. They come with a really, really long handle. So I actually cut about 6 inches off the butt of these things just to make them short, because otherwise all you got is handle that's sticking out into your boat and you're getting in the way all the time. I do that with some of the shorter ones too, because you really don't need that much handle. Just pop the end cap off, cut it off, glue it back on. Works fine to do it that way. If you want to leave the handles the way they are, that works too.
What works good to cut them off with?
I just use a cut-off saw. You want something like a miter saw or something like that, so you get the angle right and you don't have a bunch of fray. So, the system as far as the lead goes, so we use 18-pound test lead. We tie on a 6-foot leader of 17-pound test. That can be fluorocarbon, it can be mono, XT, XL, whatever you want to use. Put that on there. We tie a snap swivel to. We use like a number 2 or a number 3 snap swivel, and then we tie a 14 or a 15-pound test leader onto each one of our crankbaits. Thomas will show you the knots for that stuff. But that makes my weakest point the leader to the crankbait.
But yeah, let's get to the next knot. So now we've got our snap weight over there. We've got our braid coming down to here, and we're going to connect this braid to our fluorocarbon. Now I'm not going to tie this one just because it's a little bit harder to show how to tie. There's some really good videos on how to tie the double uni knot. Also, the double uni knot is way more widely known than the rest of these knots. Is another reason that I'm just not going to show how to tie that. But yeah, we'll have braid, 2 fluoro, just do a double uni to connect them. You can do an FG if you want. We just do double unis just because it's a little easier to tie, a little faster to tie if you ever break that off. We don't usually break that off though. And also we're not getting that knot into the eyelets of the rod a ton while we're fighting fish. Pretty much just when we're putting the rods away or letting them out is it going through the eyelets. So it's not under a lot of strain while it's going through the eyelets. So we're not really worried about it being a little bit bigger profile as where the FG knot would be a little narrower. So yeah, you've got that double uni there. So now down to your snap, you know, on your fluorocarbon. We're going to say this is our fluorocarbon now. We just tied our double uni on this end. We head down to this end. You've got your snap. That's going to be a Palomar knot. Again, I'm not going to show how to tie that one just because it's a pretty easy knot to tie. Most people know how to tie it already, so I'm not really concerned about showing you guys how to tie it. And there's a ton of videos out there on how to tie Palomar knots. So we've got our snap here. So now let's do our leader, right? Okay, so I've cut off normally this would be about a 2 foot long to 3 foot long leader for my lure, right? I've cut it off the spool, getting ready to tie a new lure on so that I can attach it on this end to that snap that we have and this end to the lure. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the lure end, right? And I'm just going to use a key here because it's a little smaller, easier to hold, still has a hole in it, and you guys will get the idea. So now what I'm going to do with my lure is I'm going to push the line through this end here. All right, and this is going to look a lot like the knot that we just tied, right? You're going to lay those two pieces of line down together, and you're going to make an overhand knot. It's just an overhand loop. But now you've got all this extra leader line to push back through there. And with fluorocarbon, sometimes the way I just did it is how you have to do it. Sometimes you'll be able to just grab these two pieces here and just kind of push them up and pull the whole thing through. But fluorocarbon, because of the memory, a lot of times you have to do that. So now I'm going to hold this end right here where my thumb is because I don't want this loop to be really big. If I hold it this end, you can see it's going to make the loop really big. I want the loop to be smaller, so I'm going to pinch right here. If the loop gets bigger than the bill on your crankbait, a lot of times it could tangle up your crankbait. So you really want to pinch this knot down as close to the bait as you can. And there it is. And what that's going to do is that's going to provide your crankbait some extra action there because it can slip around in this just a little bit more. It's not as stiff of a line tie as, say, that would be. I can wiggle the key side to side much easier with this loop than I can if I really pinch down hard right here. I don't have as much wiggle. Granted, that's a little bit different because of where I'm grabbing there. One thing to really make sure is this tag end on these. You can see mine started to come loose just a little bit right there. Really make sure you get that tag end sucked all the way down before you trim it off. And then with fluoro or mono, don't trim it off right here. Trim it off like up here. That little bit of tag there isn't going to ruin the action of your bait, but it absolutely will keep your knot tight. You know, it will provide a little bit of slip and your knot is still going to stay good. So let's head to our other end and we're going to do just the exact same thing, right? Except on this end, instead of pulling all of our line back towards the lure in, we're just going to tuck the front of the loop in. And there it is. Again, size that loop however you see fit. That's about the size that we go with is, about that. I would say that's an inch and a half long loop when it's all stretched out there. But that's how you tie our leader knots and our snap weight knots. Back to the fishing tips.
So I'm not having to retie everything every time I get snagged up or a giant northern grabs a hold of something and breaks us off. You want that weak point to be the last thing that you do. And that's going to be, you're going to lose some crankbaits, but you're not going to have to retie your whole thing. That's a big deal when you're tournament fishing because it's all about time and you don't want to miss out on some fish because you're having to retie all the time. We also use that same 3 foot long 14 or 15 pound leader on our fire line. You've got a snap swivel on the end of that fire line or that braid. In the case that your board would come off, it's going to slide down, it's going to stop at that snap swivel instead of getting all the way to your fish. And that's going to help at least keep from knocking a big fish off if the board gets all the way to that lure. there's a pretty good chance he's coming undone with that board back there swinging around. And again, you're going to break it off, and you're not going to have to put a new snap swivel on. It's just way nicer way of doing things. So rod holder setup. I see a lot of guys that try and run them all off the side of the boat, off your rails or whatever type of system you got. Works okay. I'd sooner put 2 of them right out the back. Lift them up a little bit if you have to. Don't be bashful about drilling holes in your boat. You're going to put a hole in it. Just about well be you that does it. I like to run the snap weight ones at a little bit of an angle, and I run my lead ones, the short lead rods, I run them with just a little bit more angle. Either way works fine. You definitely want to have one of those straight behind that kicker motor, or as close to that prop wash as you can, because you're going to catch some fish on that you normally wouldn't catch otherwise, just because of how erratic it makes it when you're in shallower. The side ones, we run 2 of them flat. Those are our other long rods. We'll set the lead rod all the way down in that. The snap weight rod, I actually put it up on the top of the rod holder. So it's gonna go like that. That's gonna make it easier to get that thing out when you get a big fish on it. It's not going anywhere, but that just makes things a lot easier to do it that way. The beauty about these rail mounted systems is that you can adjust them. So you can tip up your rod a little bit if you want to with your snap weights to keep the tip up better. You want your lead to run a little bit closer, tip it down, keep that lead right at the surface of the water. You got big waves, you don't want your rod tips dragging, you can adjust them that way too. We'll run our board rods off these other rod holders. We've got one here, we can put another one here. If I want to run 4 off one side, I've got 2 more in the front of the boat on the rails, so we can do that. Thomas has probably got video that he'll be coming out with that's going to show us running 4 leads out the back of the boat and running 4 boards out to the side. It's a shad bite, and those fish are suspended, and it's fun. You can run them inside or outside that way too. Just depends on how crazy you want to get with boards and tangles, and everything works.
Another hot tip about leaning these into the water, even some of you Minnesota guys get a lot of weeds, especially you get a windy day right before the day you go. You'll have a ton of weeds floating around. Tip that rod tip into the water. All the weeds will catch on your eyelets of your rod instead of sliding all the way down your line and into your bait.
We don't get many weeds on Oahe.
No, but this is a musky fishing tip that I learned.
But there are days when there's some grass too.
Yeah. Tumbleweeds. We get tumbleweeds on Oahe out there.
Tumbleweeds on Oahe.
Those blow out into the lake. Yeah.
You do have to avoid those from time to time.
So about boat control and how to use your motors for boat control. You can see we've got a kicker back here, but we do not steer with the kicker. The kicker is just power to go forward. We do have an eye troll hooked up to the kicker. And that is how we control our speed, is through the eye troll. So you'll turn that kicker on, put it in gear, put the front electric in the water as well.
And you'll see me on videos, I'm turning back, watching the graph, and steering with my remote. And that's how you do it. You steer with that remote. You need to speed up a little bit, tiny little bit or something, you can do that with your remote. But yeah, this is how we do it. We're contour trolling probably about 95% of the time. Yeah, we catch some suspended fish, but generally we're keeping that boat, or trying to keep that boat in a certain depth and steering that way. If you've got the right system, you can set your contours, it'll troll for you that way. Works pretty well. Or some stuff, I've found some places where that doesn't work at all, and you don't want to be driving around in circles when you're trying to do this. But anyway, that's the best way to do that. You know, the eye troll or the troll master, whichever one of those you prefer, control your speed with that. We just lock our kicker straight forward, and that's the way we go. So it's going to be way easier to troll with waves instead of trying to troll against them, especially if they're bigger waves. Just one of those things. It's kind of a pain if you're going to go against waves. If that's the only way the fish are biting buckle down and do it. But it's way easier to go with those waves than it is against them. Current can be an interesting thing, especially if you're running deeper stuff where there's quite a little bit of current. Going downstream you're gonna have to let out less line than going upstream with lead. And that can make a big difference as far as snagging up too. It can catch you off guard and all of a sudden you're like, you got 4 rods stuck in a tree. So that part's another thing. But yeah, otherwise, whichever way the fish want it, that's the direction you need to be going. You'll get bays where some days you got to be going into the bay. Other days you got to be going out of the bay. And sometimes you'll catch one going in where you might catch 15 coming out. So you just got to try it and see what happens. If you're marking fish and you're not getting them to go, mess with the speed, mess with the direction, mess with the color, mess with lure size or shape. There's a lot of different things you can do. You want to have a net probably with at least a 6-foot handle or something you can extend to 6 foot or longer. These long rods, big fish, you got a whole other bunch of other rods in the water. In order to get to that fish, you're going to want something that's got a really long handle on it. And then don't trust the handle. Bring the fish to the side of the boat, lift them up. If it's a big fish, more vertical instead of having a horizontal lift. Keep you from breaking things that way. Beckmans are supposedly lifetime guarantee, but I don't on their yokes. I don't know. It's hard to finish your day out with a broken net. So, or wait for them to replace your handle.
Yeah.
Another beautiful thing to do when you're trolling, and you do lots of trolling, put one of these guys in the back. This lets the guys that are running the rods see what's going on as far as depth changes, look at fish. You may see a fish that's 5 feet, 6 feet up off the bottom, and you're catching most of your fish right on the bottom. That guy sees that fish. You got time to reel that up to that fish. My big fish that we caught this last fall, that fish was way up. He was probably 7 feet off. We saw that mark, reeled up to him, and he smoked it. So you can do that. You can also let down to fish too. Say we're running up a little bit higher. We've been catching most of our fish 7, 8 feet off the bottom. You look out there, oh, there's one on the bottom sitting on the edge of a point. Drop it down to him. Sometimes just that change in where that lure is at will trigger a strike. So that's a beautiful thing to have, is that graph on the back. If you are fishing one up front and one in the back, you want to just flip one back and forth. The way things hook up anymore, you can do that, so you don't have to have an extra graph. I run 4 of them. Any more guys run 5, 6, I mean, whatever. I mean, you can have $50,000 of electronics on your boat pretty easily these days.
Another good thing about having the graph in the back of the boat is we'll turn the side scan on. Don't forget to flip the left and right if you've got it in the back of the boat, because that's not how it's set up for. So you got to flip the left and right in your side scan settings. But when we're up shallow, you can turn that side scan on and you can see if there's fish up in 1, 2, 3 foot, as long as you're close enough to it to get your side scan up there. Or if there's maybe some fish out in 14, 15, 16 outside of us if we're trolling in that like 8 to 10 foot stuff.
Yeah, if you're running the boat in 6 foot of water and you're not getting bit there, look inside, look outside. I mean, they just might be just a smidge further in or a smidge further out. And don't be afraid about putting your boat in 6 feet of water. If you're driving with that front electric and that graph is the one that you're using to control your depth, that will, most of the time, you're not going to run up on ground. Hey, with trolling, it's like with anything else. You got to be patient. You got to try it out. You got to do it. We used to figure like 1 fish an hour for tournaments was what we wanted to catch for our keeper fish. I mean, there's going to be times you're going to have 3, 4 fish on at a time in the right conditions. But be patient. Try it. There's nothing that substitutes for being out there and just practicing doing things. Same thing with depth and lures and everything else. You got to just learn how much line you want to have out to run for things. Yeah, there's dive curves out there that they put out. Those work pretty well. They at least get you a start. Otherwise, if you're not confident about where you're at, find a nice, easy, snag-free shoreline where there's a lot of sand, stuff like that, not a bunch of weeds, and just get out and practice it. Practice different speeds to see how far. And if you're hitting bottom, crank up a little bit of line. Same thing, yeah, I mean, directing the fish as far as what you want them to do or what they want you to do. Yeah, mess with your speed, mess with your depth. Just keep after it. Yeah, it's a fun way to fish. You're going to cover ground. You're going to find active fish that you might be able to come back to later and go, man, there are a pile of fish on this point here. Let's come back and cast to that point. You know, you might come back to it, cast, and catch 50, 60 walleyes off of that point just because you found that point when you were trolling. So give it a good chance. It is a fun way to catch fish, and you catch big fish too. So anyway, I got nothing else. You know all my secrets now. So go out and give it a try. Thanks again for watching.